Hey guys, this is the installation video for downloading and installing and setting up MySQL and Hibernate. And basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the MySQL community server website and you're going to download either, it's recording, right? Alright, cool. You're going to download either the DMG archive or the compressed tar file if you're on Mac, or you can download the installer or the zip file if you're on Windows. It's going to look pretty much the same on both platforms, and you can also pretty easily, what's the word I'm looking for here? You can also pretty easily pull up these instructions online if you are having issues with the platforms. That being said, you'll go ahead. My recommendation is to download the tar file, and go ahead and download and extract that. And it's going to show up in one of two places. If you downloaded the installer and ran the installer, it's going to be located in user local MySQL. Otherwise, you're going to be inside of wherever you downloaded and extracted the tar file to. Once you've done that, go ahead and cd into it in a terminal, and then cd into support files. And then you're going to do a /MySQL-server, either start or stop, depending upon what you're trying to do. The same thing is with the DMG installer. You can see there's a support files directory here. You'll just cd into that and do the same thing I'm doing on this side. Pretty easy to get set up. So once that's started and running, you can also check to make sure it's running by just doing a ps aux grep MySQL. And you can see it's running right here. So there's one last thing we'll need to do before we can confirm our MySQL installation. When you've installed, you should get an alert somewhere that tells you what your temporary root password is. In this case, mine was this. So what we'll want to do is, if I can go back to my terminal here, what we'll want to do is open a MySQL console. So you'll do a MySQL -u root -p, and you can either enter the password here, or you can omit this field and it will prompt you for the password. What did I already changed the password? Anyway, so once you've done that and are able to get into your MySQL installation, you're going to want to run these three commands here, or these three SQL statements. So what we're going to do is you'll do a set password, and this is just to make sure that the root password has been changed. I suppose you can leave the root password blank, but usually MySQL complains about that, so it's better to go ahead and change it. And then we're just going to do a use MySQL, so use the MySQL schema. And then finally, we're going to run this command here, set password for root at localhost. Now we've updated our password, so we can go ahead and exit. Now we'll go ahead and jump into our IDEA folder, or our IDEA project. There's a few things that we're going to need to do. The first one is going to be inside of our resources directory. We're going to add a Hibernate CFG file, and basically that contains I'm gonna upload all of this code to GitHub so you guys can see it. It's pretty easy. I'm also going to post a link on Blackboard to a tutorial that pretty much covers this in its entirety. I just had to vary a little bit from that tutorial to get it to work. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to configure all of our session stuff to map to our MySQL installation. We also need to make sure that we create a schema and our tables for our entities, so our objects. And for that, you'll want to download either MySQL Workbench, or you can use the console as well. I think MySQL Workbench works a little bit better. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a table, and that's not to jump away from what we're doing here with the configuration, but this has already been set up, and I'll post a link to how to get it set up. But let's go ahead and walk through creation of the tables and mapping all of our car entities, or I'm sorry, yeah, car entities to the database. So once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and create a table called cars inside of my IT4045 schema. So what we're going to do is say ID and its primary key, not null, unique, and auto increment. And then we're going to create a field for make, and that can be a varchar. It has to be not null. It doesn't have to be unique. And then we want to do model varchar 45 is 45 character. Actually, let's call it 80 just to be safe. Not null. We want to say color. Not null. And we want to say year. We're going to make that an int and not null as well. So the only one on this field that needs to be unique is going to be ID, which we're also auto incrementing. So we're going to go ahead and apply. Alright, we've got our cars table. So now we need to go in and create the mapping for our cars, or create the mapping from our car Pojo class to our cars table. So we're going to go ahead and create a new XML file, call it car.hbm.xml. And I'm just going to grab the content here and we'll walk through it. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a node called Hibernate-mapping, and then we're going to map, we're going to create a child node called class, and the name is going to be com.it4045, which is our package name, .dto.car, and that's going to map to our cars table, and our catalog is our schema name. So ID is the same, but now the property is going to change, and we're going to make this make. And the unique is false. We're going to say property model. That was 80. We're going to say color, which was 45. And we're going to say year, which is an int. So I can omit the length. So basically what we're doing here is we're mapping a property on the Pojo class to a column in the table. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back to our hibernate.cfg. It'll open it. and we're going to create a new record, mapping resource record for our car model. I believe there was one more file. Oh, you know what? I think that was the only 2 files we had to add. Oh, so now we need to add the dependencies for Hibernate as well. And so basically what we need for Hibernate is going to be dom4j, commons logging, commons collection, cglib. We're going to need the Hibernate framework, version 3.3.2 general release, and we're going to need the MySQL driver, which you can all add to your POM file. And again, this code will be available on Blackboard for you to take a look at. So once we've done all of that, we should be ready to go ahead and test it out to see if we have successfully wired everything up. So I'm going to go into the util file, and I'm going to go into a function I created in class on Thursday called migrate. And basically what this is doing is this is going to go ahead and migrate for us all of our cars. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for car in cars. Wait, that's Python notation. For car new user DAO, get all cars. Oh, not user DAO. Vehicles DAO dot get all cars. Gotta do the import here, import class. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to open a Hibernate session. But before we do that, we have to create a Hibernate utility. And so I created a new package in class on Thursday called persistence. And inside of persistence lives a class called Hibernate utility. And that class contains a static final member called session factory, which is a session factory object, and calls our build session factory method right here. And basically what we do is we instantiate a new configuration, configure it, and then build a session factory. And basically what this is doing is this is referencing our hibernate.cfg.xml file. And then, what was I going to say? And then, oh shoot, and then builds a session to our database from it. Again, this code will be on Blackboard for you guys to pull down. So let's go back into our XML migrator. So once we have created a new session, we say begin transaction. The transaction just allows us to add things to our database as a transaction. So then we'll do save car, and then we'll say session.getTransaction.commit. Because remember, we've opened a session to the database. We created a new transaction, so we commit the transaction to save the transaction to the database. So then all we need to do is down here, and actually instead of creating a new session every time, let's go ahead and put it outside of our for loop, and then we'll just say session.close. Now, if I go into my cars database, or my cars table in my database, you'll see that select star from IT4045 app.cars, you'll see there's no cars in our database. So we have to write this migrator to take the records that are in our XML and add them to our database. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fire up our app. In class on Thursday, I wrote a very simple migration form, which is wired to a bean. I think I put it in the home bean. Yeah, which is wired to a method in the bean, which is calling our XML migrator class. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up my app. Make sure the video is still running. And I'm going to say faces, migrator, and then I'm going to do migrate. And if everything worked right, and it looks like an error got thrown somewhere. Null pointer exception. Where was there a null pointer thrown? Do log in. I never called the do log in. That's weird. Let's go ahead and debug this real quick and see what's actually happening. So once we've created our session, what we can do now is go to faces, migrator, and hit the migrate button. So now if I step into my migrate method and I've created my new session. Now let's see here, and maybe we're choking on something else. Okay, I see what happens. I never implemented. That's weird. I could have sworn I did that in class. We never wired that up. Anyway, if we were doing this with users, I need to go through and implement this. I forgot to implement the vehicles DAO class, but if we do it with users, this will add our users to the database, as you can see here. I did it with users in class on Thursday. And basically, that's all you should need to wire everything up to Hibernate. And if you have any questions, let me know.